Hello, everybody, and welcome to this Thesis Theater. Thank you very much for joining us. Today, we are with Anne Marie Gazzolo, who has been a student at Signum since 2012. And she is the author of Moments of Grace and Spiritual Warfare in the Lord of the Rings, Chosen, The Journeys of Bilbo and Frodo of the Shire, and a companion piece, The Long Way Home, which is a collection of poems centered about a heroic quest and its aftermath. And I believe once this is all over and done with, Anne-Marie, two fantasy series anxiously await their turn to come out. Is that the case?
Right. I'm working on those now.
Excellent. So we just got to get this finished and you can get on that.
Yeah. Been working on the thesis, so yeah.
All right, well, it's good to have something to move on to once you're done with this, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so we will get started on discussing Anne-Marie's thesis in a moment, but just to let you know that if you have any questions while we're going through this Thesis Theatre, please feel free to put them into the chat box. I will keep my eye on that chat box and I will use those questions at some point during this Thesis Theatre. Okay, so Anne-Marie, the quality of pity and mercy in the Lord of the Rings. Can we start by you giving us, first of all, the full title of your thesis, and then can you give us a brief overview of that thesis?
Okay, well, I called it, it is Harry here by my side. I called it Nienna, Lady of Pity and Mercy, and the Fall of Sauron.
Okay.
And I chose to do that. Originally, I was just going to speak on pity and mercy just in general and how important that was because it is all over the place, especially in Lord of the Rings. And it starts, of course, in The Hobbit, but it's also in the Silmarillion. And I read then an essay on Nienna, and that really opened my eyes as to really her, invisible presence throughout the whole thing through Gandalf and what he brought from what he learned from her and what he taught Frodo and Aragorn and Faramir and how they were able to pass that along to others and so that this was kind of like in this thread which I wasn't aware of before, which kind of tied things together in a way that I had never even considered before, and I don't think anyone else has considered outside this one essay by Christine Larson, which was so wonderful.
We'll talk about, obviously, some of the works that you've used during your thesis process anyway. But, I mean, Nienna, she's clearly an important character for you, but she doesn't appear all that much, actually, in the text, does she? She's just momentarily in the Silmarillion.
Right. And that's probably why, I didn't, when I was doing the research, I really didn't find anything that spoke to her, of her outside Larson's essay that really said anything beyond, well, yeah, she was one of the Valar and she cried a lot. I mean, you saw a lot of that, but you didn't really see that I found in anything addressing her in depth. But then as I was doing the research and all of this, that really showed me that she really was important, and I wonder whether even the professor himself realized how important, because it is, unless you really have your eyes open, which my eyes were opened by Larson's essay, that it could be very easily missed.
So yeah. Here we have a character who blink and you miss her, and an element that she brings to the text, blink and you miss it. And yet you chose to write on this. So can you explain what drew you to this? Why did you choose this particular topic?
Well, I wanted to, even from a year ago, or at least, wanted to do the topic of pity for Gollum and how that was so important the whole tale and to the whole history of Middle Earth. And then I just, I kept reading more, and then I came across the Nienna article, and she was always one of my favorite Bella. I've only read the Silmarillion through once, but I've read parts of it more than once, and and the creation story is, one of my favorite sections. I like Beren and Luthien also. Those are the only two parts I've really gone back to. And that is, you're right, blink or miss it. The one little sentence about, Gandalf's learning at her feet and opposites, and it's just, bet you the passing. But, when you look at all the connect the dots and opposites, that this is, a big, huge thread that's running through the whole thing, and that he brought, her, the heart really with him, and showed it to other people, and then they were able to, extend it to others. I mean, it would be a stretch since there's no evidence on all business, but I wonder whether even the pity that welled up in Bilbo, we know that came from an external source. I wonder whether he could even have come from her. I mean, everyone would, from a Christian point of view, think it just came from Ilúvatar, but maybe it came from Nienna also. So, I mean, you can kind of see that, because of course Gandalf was not there to inspire him like he inspired everyone else. So it did come from sort of an external source. So you do wonder.
Okay, so can you give us a little flavor of the sorts of arguments that you make in your thesis?
About how important it is, or
just some of the main points that you make in your thesis, so we can get a really good overview of everything that you're talking about.
Two of the big points is seeing someone else who is so totally different from you, the other, which is such a problem even these days, and opposites of the hatred that different groups have for each other, and opposites, and to see the person as a person, to not see them just as a label, or as, so like when Frodo, is all out for Gollum's blood and all of this, and Gandalf says, well, you have not seen him, that he knows that once Frodo does that, that his heart is going to change, or guesses that's going to happen, and that you see beyond Gollum, and you see Smeagol, and you see someone that you actually do have something in common with. And I think the ring itself, unwittingly, of course, opens Frodo's eyes too. And so, I mean, that is so important, what the journey that he goes on to, it's a pity that Bilbo didn't kill him, to now that I see them, I do pity him. And that huge journey opened up his eyes by Gandalf, but also by the ring itself, and the suffering that caused, and knowing that Smeagol had suffered so much more. And there was still a little bit of Smeagol left, I mean, which is amazing after centuries. And, and it doesn't sound like, Smeagol was, too great shakes to begin with. I mean, not so morally strong as Frodo and Sam and Gandalf, Aragorn, etc. are, but that he was still able to withstand. Doesn't have a little bit of himself still left that Frodo tried to reach, and that Gandalf hoped for his cure. And so, I mean, it's just, I don't know, it's just one of the more inspiring things. I think really is, I think, a love story in Frodo and Smeagol and love at the deepest, purest sense, that care for someone else's soul and all of this.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So if there was one particular point that you had to choose from your thesis that you would say is the central argument that you're making, what would that point be?
Well, I think part of it is the seeing the other not as an enemy, but as a fellow human being, but also what Gandalf said about sparing a life and giving the opportunities for redemption. Not even the very wise can see all ends, that you don't know what a life is, what impact that life could have either on you or on someone else, and not to, as Bilbo did, not to strike without need. And that comes to the same point himself. And Sam is like, oh, let's just take the guy out. And Frodo's like, well, we can't do that because, he actually hasn't tried to do anything bad yet, so we can't punish him for something he hasn't done yet, which is, of course, the same point that Bilbo reached. So I think this give the possibilities of redemption, just like Saruman is given possibilities of redemption also, and it's up to the person to take it or not, but that you extend it, you give the opportunity.
On the topic of redemption, which clearly is central to what you're thinking about in terms of the Lord of the Rings, what do you think about the idea of whether orcs have the possibility of redemption? Is there pity and mercy for them?
I know I've looked into that just a teeny, but
I know it wasn't part of your thesis.
One time actually, it would be interesting to do a fan fiction story of that, which I never did. But I'd like to think that they would be, because if they were just corrupted elves, or at least in the beginning they were. Certainly, Hobbits are my area of expertise, but then they were not created in evil and all business. They were corrupted, so I think that they would be a possibility if someone was, I don't know what I want to say, brave enough or wise enough or whatever to actually take on the task. Because I think if because I don't think that I don't think that Gollum really could be redeemed, because Gollum was born in evil out of Deagle's murder. But I really do, I would hope for Smeagol. I think they're really, it's the same person, but I think they're different. But they're different, they're Smeagol did not, in my opinion, deserve 5 centuries of hell. Yes, he murdered.
Few people do, I would imagine.
But did he really deserve that? That tremendous hell? And that he's still able to hold on to just a shred of himself. I think that's huge. So I don't really have any hope for Gollum, but and I'm not even. It doesn't even sound like that Tolkien had much hope for Smeagol. But I don't like the people that speak like, say Gollum when they mention Smeagol, because Smeagol, it really breaks your heart. Gollum, who likes Gollum? But Smeagol.
There are moments for Smeagol,
I think there's some hope for him, and I think for the same reason there could be hope for orcs, because nothing. They weren't, born into evil. They were corrupted and all of this, Smeagol and orcs. So maybe they never knew, like orcs probably never knew goodness, really. But if someone presented to them, maybe they would actually, have some sort of vain awareness that, hey, maybe I could choose another path in life.
Yeah, it's certainly something that Tolkien struggled with, wasn't it? The idea of redemption for the orcs, which is why he came up with so many alternatives for their origins, because the Christian in him couldn't actually come to terms with the idea of having created creatures for whom there was no possibility of redemption. That just didn't gel with his beliefs. So
Right.
yeah, I like the distinction you're drawing between Gollum and Smeagol actually there, because you're right, Smeagol is heartbreaking. And I'm thinking of particularly that moment on the stairs of Cirith Ungol where he reaches out to touch Frodo's knee. And there's like this possibility there, this moment where something different could have happened, but Sam wakes up and prevents him from doing what he was doing. And it's just a moment where in the description it says that he looks like this tired old man, and it is heartbreaking, isn't it?
Yeah, because I think that Sam didn't do it deliberately, didn't even do it knowingly, but yeah, that is the moment of Smeagol's death. Gollum dies at Mount Doom, but Smeagol dies then. And I mean, it is extremely tragic because it really does. I mean, I like the ideas of that, you read in the professor's letters that, he kind of played around the ideas of it, AUs and all of this alternate universes, and that maybe Smeagol would have voluntarily cast himself into the fire out of love and also out of his realization that he couldn't give up the ring. But out of love to save Frodo and all. So I mean, I love the ideas of how things could have been.
Sure.
And
the sliding doors.
He was saved because, I bring out in the paper, if Nienna can, ask before her fellow Valar for, pity and forgiveness of, basically who is the devil himself, I think she could also plead for Smeagol. So, yeah, it's just an interesting idea to think about.
Yes, definitely. And in fact, I've got a question in the question box from Kate Neville, which is directly about this. We've got a few other questions, but I will come back to those. But this one says, if Smeagol is of Hobbit kind, and Smeagol is able to hold on to a fragment of humanity after such a long time, does that say something about the nature of Hobbits and why they are able to respond with pity?
Well, they do seem to be extremely resilient to the evil of the ring. They're not, aware of their creator, but I think they must have been somehow given the, the grace, the strength, whatever you want to call it, to be able to withstand what men could not, and what Gandalf himself even knows as an incarnate angel knows that he would not be able to. Isildur fell flat on his face, and it might appear that Smeagol immediately falls also, but my personal theory is that since his people lived, near the Gladden Fields where the ring was, lost for, 2,500 years, whatever, that, it could have just been poisoning him slowly this whole time. And then what seems to be immediate fall, maybe just the last moment before, this long seduction, the consummation of it. But you can look at it that way, or you could just say, well, man, he fell flat on his face, and why did he do that if he was Hobbit kind? But maybe he just slowly weakened, because I don't think anyone just falls into evil just like that.
I mean, so, there are examples of hobbits who aren't, as good as others. Ted Sandyman, for example. So there are examples.
Right, you don't want to have Ted with the ring, or or Lotho.
No,
But
no.
I mean, they are extremely resilient, and I mean they would, and as like anyone would have fallen eventually. You know, Bilbo's still addicted decades after.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yes. Yeah.
and then Sam would have fallen too, had he held it any longer.
Mm-hmm.
But that's, you know, it's good that he didn't, and I don't really hold that Frodo gave in. He did give in, but I think the ring claimed him rather more
Rather
than
than Frodo claiming the
the
ring.
other way around. I don't really see that he had free will at that point. I think, you know, beats himself up later for thinking that, but I don't think he really did have full control of his will, and he was very aware of that. He was up to that point. He was, you know, I'm almost in his power now. I mean, he is aware that the ring is getting more and more control, and that means basically like a tragedy that he did not realize that was the culmination at the end, and all of a sudden thinks that he's free to do what he wants. Well, he wasn't.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Kate Neville says she really likes your theory about the ring being in the river right where Gollum was living, and that this may have caused some form of spiritual pollution, she calls it in the chat box. She likes that theory. But there's also Claire Rohan has put in the chat box, picking up on this idea of being addicted to the ring. She says, would you say that the addiction to the ring is what more perverted Smeagol's person than the murder he committed? And as with any person's addiction, it is still separate from the person. So you've got the addiction and you have the person, and they're not one and the same. Addiction is not a person's identity in itself, but is separate from them, and therefore leaves the door open to redemption. So is it more the addiction to the ring that perverts Smeagol rather than something inherent in Smeagol himself?
I think, and hi Claire, she's my sister. I think definitely the ring did pervert Smeagol, and that was the main cause of his terrible suffering and all of this. The ring and being so dominated by Gollum, who was, you know, so I mean, I think the Lord of the Rings movie does it well with the first time I saw that, before I saw the movies before I read the books. You know, when you have the scene with on Two Towers with Smeagol and Gollum talking to each other, which is like my second favorite scene in that whole movie. I was looking at these really two different people. I mean, it is done so well with the multiple person. I mean, the split personality that's in there. So I think the addiction of the ring and the presence of Gollum as a separate entity, you know, always beating you down and all of this. So that's why I have you have pity. And we always talk about pity for Gollum, or pity extended to Gollum, but we're really talking about pity for Smeagol, and I think there is
good to make that distinction.
You know, you could argue that for, you know, hope for redemption for him, because I think he did have certainly some inherent flaws to begin with that the ring was able to exploit and worsened. But yeah, I see him as an addicted soul that you have, and I bring it up in the paper slightly that Frodo had to get to that point himself of, you know, an addict understanding another addict. You had to, you know, be in the skin for a little bit before you could truly understand, and I think that's exactly what you know, Bilbo had that glimpse. Sam, you know, had that critical point. He had that glimpse that he had been briefly a ring bearer himself. He just had a sliver of what, but that was enough to have him see Gollum as you know, as a person that, you know, like terribly suffering and all of this. So that's why he was able to get pity also. And that was just like paramount. All the other ones would have been wasted if Sam had not given it. So it really is an interesting journey that they all go on.
Definitely, definitely. So Scott Hodgman is asking specifically about the word pity, which is an interesting and intentional choice, he says, by Professor Tolkien. Now, I know that your thesis wasn't about his use of language, it was about pity as a theme. But have you any ideas about why you think he chose a Middle English word that comes from Old French? It's obviously it's from pitié, French, rather than the opposite, which is the Old English cognate like ruth and ruthless. I don't know if you looked into that at all.
Well, I did just a little in that pity and pietas, if I'm saying that right, were once originally connected, and there are definitely some elements of that pietas in the devotion to either a person or a cause, or Frodo, Sam to Frodo, Frodo to the quest, Aragorn to the whole his long journey to the kingship and to Arwen. I don't really think I consider that a whole lot why he chose that particular word. I mean, it meant something to him, obviously, but maybe and going out on a limb here, maybe also his service in World War I or something maybe shaped some views. Also, I don't know. I can't speak to that with any authority there, but.
Okay. So at the start of this talk, you mentioned an essay that particularly inspired you to write about pity and mercy. Can you tell us a little bit about that text, that essay you were referring to?
Yeah, that was in as a collection of essays on Perilous and Fair that Janet Brennan Croft edited, and I think someone else did also. And that was just about
That's
the treatment.
Chris Piccaro's Perilous and Fair.
Yeah, the treatment of women in the works. Because that's something that I personally do not understand myself, saying that the professor had no strong women. I go, well, hey, like A1, Luthien, they're two strong people right there and all, which is, it's amazing what those women were able to do. So I think that's ridiculous to say.
Melian, Galadriel.
I mean, give me a break, but and of course, Galadriel is also strong too. But I think Luthien, I mean, what she does for Out of Love is just amazing, and they would take on the Witch King and so. But this essay, and this is why I bought that book, is because it was just on Nienna, and the Power of Mercy, Power and Pitying Tears, I think it was called. And it laid out how Nienna started out as this really terrible person, and I'm not even sure how to pronounce it, F-U-I, started out just as this really merciless, pitiless person in charge of judging the souls of men after they died. And she, like, there was no mercy in that court. And she did, if someone merited going to Valinor, which, the equivalent happened at this point, they went there. But you also drove people into hell. And most of the people went to the equivalent of purgatory. Some people went to Mandals. But she was like, okay, this is what you merit, this is where you're getting. I mean, there was no mercy, no pity, no, you know, she was a, you know, this justice itself. And you don't want to meet her in a dark alley or even a well-lit alley. Then that was only the first version of these tales. And then you meet Nienna, who's the exact opposite, and that people call to her, and she gives mercy, and she's, you know, weeping for the tears and all of this. And this is who Gandalf learns from. You know, one tries to think what he would have learned from the other. So I did, that was, and she's the one that brought up the how important Nienna really is. I mean, she's barely mentioned, but how really important she is to the whole tale, and that that she does have this invisible presence through Gandalf in the tale. So it really changed my whole angle of approaching the thing.
It's nice when you get something that really inspires you, and you look at that and you think, oh, that's something I hadn't thought of before, and go diving in.
Yeah, and bring something different to the scholarship that's out there and all of this. So.
Okay, so during this process of writing your thesis, I know, working with you, that you had a multitude of ideas, vast numbers of ideas, and for some reasons, obviously to keep it down to the size you're allowed to do, you had to kill your darlings, you had to get rid of some of your ideas. So what sorts of ideas were you unable to keep in your thesis in the end? And why did you decide that you also then had to cut them out?
Well, originally, as I said, that it was going to be more just an exploration of pity and mercy as that is the theme, and not tied to any particular, you know, person or anything. But after I noticed this thread, I took out the stuff that I did not think was directly tied to Nienna, as in the Elven King's pity for the men of Lake Town. There were some other elements. Bilbo, more in the Hobbit, not Bilbo, Balin, and saying it might be, you know, our mercy that you found the weak spot of Smaug, you know, something good might come out. But so there were some elements that I did take out to have this more of a focus on what I thought was really more the handiwork of Nienna.
So it's part of the natural process, isn't it, of creating a thesis, is that you start off with one idea and you can often meander down different paths until you find the absolute focus. This is the core thesis, if you like, of my writing. And then, and obviously ideas then have to drop off along the way, don't they?
Yeah, right.
Okay, so I mean, despite all of that and having to cut some ideas out, you have a completed thesis. But if I'd said to you, hey, Anne Marie, how about you write 30,000 words instead? How would you have expanded your thesis? Where would you have taken what you've done and moved it forward?
Well, I did play around the ideas of, I mean, you could either bring in some other examples from other literature, you know, comparing like Frankenstein to Gollum or something. I kind of played briefly around with that, but I didn't really seriously consider doing that. I also more seriously considered it then especially after I got to the Nienna theme, discounted using examples from the primary world. So I thought of Marcus Luttrell's book, Lone Survivor, which directly deals with the same choice that Bilbo and Frodo face with what to do with Gollum when they come across some tribesmen in Afghanistan upon their secret location, and whether they should really do a preemptive strike and save their own skins, because, you know, these people could possibly betray them. But they reached the same agreement, same conclusion that Bilbo and Frodo do. They can't execute, you know, someone for a crime they haven't yet committed. Now, their pity and mercy had for themselves a very tragic consequences because they were indeed betrayed. But that does not take away that they made the right choice, that it was an extremely heroic thing to do with the full knowledge that things could go south. And they did indeed do, which fortunately didn't happen to Bilbo and Frodo, but very, very tragically, and Marcus was indeed the lone survivor of that mission. There is another book that also directly deals with the same situation, The Lion of Sabray, which is from the Afghan man who saved Marcus's life from his point of view. And that, I mean, these are all great books. That he had to, and he and his entire village really risked their lives to save Marcus from the Taliban. And the man felt very directly, very clearly called by God to save this man's life. He felt it very, I mean, it was really kind of like a voice from heaven, you know, saying, you gotta save this man. And this was an American, this was an enemy, and he still obeyed that call. And there was one other book that I read, I Who Did Not Die, which also it takes place during the Iran-Iraq War, and it was about saving the enemy combatant's life, giving mercy to that person, and that you know, coming upon them in battle, injured, and the person, you know, like saying, I'm Muslim, just like you, and all of this, and you know, begging for, and being given that even though they were on the opposite sides of that war and are now really brothers of the heart and all of this, and that's so. I mean, these are all really love stories of the purest kind, and those are the things that I think directly are parallels to what happens with Bilbo and Frodo and Gollum.
Well, that would obviously be a very interesting expansion to your thesis. Yeah, maybe we could see that expansion come through in some conference papers one day or something like that. That would always be good.
I mean, I did find the military so inspiring because they really know what love is and the sacrifices that they're ready to make, and the love that they're really, really ready to extend to even their enemies. So,
okay.
Yeah.
So here you are at the end of your thesis journey, and like any student that's got to this point, there's been a lot of hard work on your part. You've put many hours into producing this final piece of work. It's been quite a process. It always is, isn't it? Something like this. I mean, you're a writer anyway, so you know that going from the blank page to the finished product, there's blood, sweat and tears goes into that process. But what do you think you personally have learned or gained from completing this thesis? What has it given you?
Well, I think, I mean, I as you say, I have written the 2 books, which are much longer novels, but still, this is the first scholarly for these classes, that the length that I did for it. So, I mean, originally when I was heard about it only being 30 pages, I go, oh man, that's a drag, because I mean, I wanted to turn a whole nother book into it, you know. But then I was like, okay, good, it's only 30. So, but it was, and I think it turned out well, and it was, you know, definitely a marathon, not sprint, as they say. But I'm pleased with it. I think it helps that I already love research, because I'm just one of those nutty people that do, and that's actually why I started back to school, because I had been wanting to do that, and I'm thinking, wow, to write about Middle Earth and go and write papers at the same time. I mean, this is so cool. So that, and I have questioned my sanity several times during this process. But it has really been a great experience, and I'm looking forward to further insanity with the PhD when that comes available. And we'll finish my sanity.
Further insanity is guaranteed with the PhD. I can promise you that.
I'm thinking maybe of just changing gears and doing maybe something Arthurian, and maybe not necessarily the legends as they came down, like Mallory and all that, which I don't really care for, but how Arthur is treated in like Jack White's books, Stephen Lawhead's books. More of an historical character, or in the time period that he really would have existed if he indeed did, which I think there is, some good evidence on not Arthur and Guinevere and all that other stuff, as the legends have it, but as some sort of war leader, in the post-Roman world and all this, I think is a possibility. So I see another obsession possibly coming up, and I love my obsessions.
So other students who are approaching this point in their academic careers are other Signum students, some of whom will be watching now and some of whom may be watching the recording. What advice would you give them, those who are about to begin this part of their master's degree?
Take a deep breath.
More than once.
But yeah, this is a very intense 6 months, and to prepare ahead of time as much as possible, to have an idea what you want to do before the whole 6 months starts. I mean, which you're going to have to do anyways because of your having to do the proposal and all of this. But have a good idea of what you want to do. Already have started your research, at least finding the sources, because you're going to have a ton to read, a ton. And, unless you're just, a speed reader or something, which I am not, you're going to really have a lot of time spent just reading. And I did go through, as you know, my little freak out stage in the beginning when I'm thinking, oh man, I got to read 4 books. I got to read all this other stuff. I got to write book reports on these things, and longer book reports than I've ever done. I mean, are you nuts? And then after I did the first report, I said, wow, I can do this. So yeah, it is a learning process, and it does get easier. But I would definitely suggest starting your first draft in the breaks between the reading class and the writing class. I did that. I started out like 3 weeks, a month out or something, and I'm glad I did because I really needed that time. The first draft was the hardest. The second and third ones, because I worked so hard in the first one, really weren't bad at all. I knocked those out in a few days. But the first one, you really have to work on making that as good as you can get it, knowing that you will have to improve upon it, but really work on making that the best thing you can do right from the beginning, because it will cost you a lot less work later on.
Yeah, giving birth to that first draft that's hard work.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is true. Okay, I can see there is one last question here in the question box from Scott Hodgman, and it pulls us back to kind of where we were starting at the beginning of this Thesis Theater. He says it's a wonderful topic and title, and he'd like to know if you were more drawn to the idea of pity or more drawn to Nienna herself, or was there something else that kind of pulled the two together?
I think pity all along, and I bring it up in both my books too. That I think pity all along was the interest, and that was going to be, the focus and all of this. But then I discovered this about Nienna, and she's already like my favorite Valar, and Elba will be up there too. And I like to think that she was, you know, instrumental in Frodo's healing after he went west. I think that you could have someone that you could cry with, and that would sympathize with you. And I think maybe, and I would hope, I even did a fan fiction on this. I would hope that Celebrian, I like that pronunciation better. I've heard it both ways. Celebrian had found, that Frodo found a kindred spirit in her too, because she went west for the same reason, that she was violated by evil and couldn't deal with it in Middle Earth, and went west for healing, same reason he went west. So I think that those two people, and SD too, maybe, that he had so many people that could sympathize with him and could help in his healing, and not judge him, but just realize, just help him, find a safe place that he could heal. So I think I was drawn more and more to Nienna after I really read the essay, and I'm thinking, wow, this is like so cool. I mean, I could really do this. The idea brings some new view that I hadn't encountered. I mean, pitting Gollum is all over the place, and you got, tons of ink spilled over that. But except for Larson, I really didn't find anything.
Why do you think that is? Why is there so little done?
Yeah. But people think, when you realize, you see how terribly important she is, you would think other people would have seen it. So, and they did. I just didn't discover it. But it was not high in Google searches. So, so I'm just glad to be able to put something out there that it's out, hadn't really been considered.
One of the beauties of Tolkien studies, though, isn't it, that we keep finding new things to talk about.
New things all the time and all things,
Okay, well, looking at the question board, I think we are out of questions. So I think we are all done. I want to say well done to you, Anne Marie, because getting to this stage is an achievement. It's totally an achievement for anybody who gets to this point. So my round of applause to you, because you've done it. You are now finished. You are done. Yeah, Kate Neville is doing the applause in the chat box as well. We do applaud you. I applaud any student who completes their studies, because it is definitely an achievement. So fantastic job and well done to you. And of course, your thesis will be available in the Signum library for all of those who have access. Scott Hodgman says, thank you for sharing, congratulations. Claire Rohan, your sister, apparently says, woohoo, congratulations, Anne. So lots and lots of happiness and congratulations going on the chat board for you. So very, very well done. And thank you for allowing me on the journey with you. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you so much.
Okay, so thank you very much to everybody for joining us here today for this Thesis Theatre with Anne Marie. And I hope that those of you who have that interest will hop along to the Signum library at some point and download Anne Marie's thesis and have a read of it, because I promise you there's some really, really interesting stuff in there. Okay, right, thank you very much, everybody. And join us next time for the next one. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Good night.